purported positive cases, self-reported positive cases at Fairview. Um, those cases, those tests could have been performed either at a PCP, a pediatrician, an urgent care, or maybe even at a local health department. There's two different types of tests that they perform on these students. One are antigen tests, which have a 50% false positive rate, and one is a molecular test, which has a 2% false negative rate. We have no idea which test they have used. There's been no secondary confirmation of the cases to confirm that they are indeed positive. First thing that happens is our kids are immediately sent to remote learning. At one point, we've dropped below 70% of school attendance for our children, and at that point, they kind of, I guess, haphazardly made a decision that it's the same 70% threshold or metric that they use during flu season. To have, we had less than 70% attendance, we had 67%, and so they shut school down for 2 weeks. We feel it's arbitrary, that the decisions are not based on the protocols that were outlined at the beginning of the year, and again, it puts our kids at an unfair advantage from an academic, athletic, and extracurricular activity perspective.
So it boils down to, you've been told because of the COVID cases at Fairview High School.
The COVID cases and subsequent quarantines. So if there is indeed these children were given a antigen test and it was a 50% false positive, then half of the kids who were subsequently quarantined due to close contact have been sent home.
Do you feel like any other schools in the district have been treated differently? If so, which schools?
All I can speak to is Fairview. We're the only one who's closed. I can look at other schools to our west who are going to school in person, who are doing extracurricular activities without interruption, don't have mask mandates, and don't have social distancing. I can look to schools within our own county who are still operating. The majority of our schools, all of our county schools, Brentwood, Franklin, Nolensville, Independence, they are all still operating. Fairview is the only one. I'm not sure if we're being made an example, but it feels arbitrary, and it's certainly unfair that our kids in Fairview are not getting the same educational opportunities as the other students within our county, as well as neighboring counties.
If these boys aren't allowed to play, what do you think are some of the repercussions if they're not allowed to?
Oh, we've already seen it. I have friends firsthand whose children have seen a decline in their mental health. They've seen a decline in their physical health. They have turned to alcohol and drugs because they don't have a structured environment any longer. And what we've seen is a decrease and a decline in the grades of students who previously were high excelling students.
Is there any concern about scholarships?
Absolutely, 100% concern about scholarships, academic and from an extracurricular standpoint. Again, because the children at the other schools who are allowed to participate in person and continue to participate in extracurricular activities have an unfair advantage over the students at Fairview who don't have the capability to participate in those extracurricular or academic activities.
Anything? Good. When you look behind you and you see a lot of these players, and you see, I think some of them are probably, supporters, friends. Well, what are you hearing from the guys behind us about not being able to get on the field?
They're concerned about not being able to get on the field, but more importantly, they want to be in the classroom. There's a lot of football players here today that are representing the team, but they're also representing the students of Fairview. They just happen to be the ones to come out and support us. That might be because they're in my network with my children, but they're advocating for all students at Fairview, not just for a football team.
When was this decision handed over to you all? When did you all find out about this?
We found out yesterday at 4 o'clock from Carol Birdsong. My son's been on quarantine for almost 2 weeks. He comes off quarantine on Friday. So there's a large batch of kids from the first round of infections that will come off quarantine on Friday. They will roll off, and that 67% will then be above 70% on Monday. That the case count and the subsequent quarantines of students should be above 70%. But they've arbitrarily made a decision against Fairview to sideline the students and sideline the kids that are participating in extracurriculars.
What is if you could say one thing to James Golden right now, what would you say, and have you heard from him at all?
To who?
James Golden.
Oh, to Jason Golden. I would tell him that Fairview's no different than anybody else. We shouldn't be treated unfairly. We have a constitutional right based on the Tennessee Constitution for our students to have an equal opportunity at education and an equal opportunity at extracurriculars. It's making a irreparable damage to our students physically and mentally. Their psychological implications have not been weighed, and they need to be. I'm not an infectious disease expert. I hear that argument all the time. I don't need to be. I'm a parenting expert. If my son's sick, I keep him home. If my daughter's sick, I keep him home. I don't self-report every illness that my child has to the school system. In Tennessee right now, it shows on tn.gov for the age group 0 to 10 and 11 to 20, there's a 0% death rate. 0%. There are some fatalities that have happened, but if they round to the nearest whole number, it's 0. And that's what tn.gov has listed on their website. And I personally am not going to be afraid to send my children to in-person learning for a 0% mortality risk when my son has a greater risk of dying in an automobile accident. My daughter has a greater incidence or a greater risk of dying from the flu.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Appreciate you covering it. Tyrants suck. Here, I'll let you.
I assume that you all want to probably teach the players to talk, or need them.
If one of them wants to speak, that's fine. I mean, we've got seniors here. Luke's a senior.
Seniors want to talk?
You got it. Come on. Go up here and go. Luke, you can go. Hold the sign of money. Come on, Violet, speak up. Come on, Mr. We need
Made him make good impact. Tell them how it impacts them. Tell them, explain how it's unfair that they get to go to school and they get to participate. You don't. You have five less game film, 5 less highlights. Step up and talk to them, answer their questions. Is that, Steve, is that okay if he talks?
Absolutely.
All right.
Make sure I got back. Come on, Luke, you know what to do. Look at me. Luke's trained all his life. Hold it. Okay. Where's Chance? I have no idea. We don't know his name. No, Chance would be a good speaker. I'm so sorry that I got so sorry. You got this, Luke. Luke's so anxious. What you talking about?
Come over here. I don't want to.
It's all face. Okay, hey, we can't face it. Why are you facing this way? No, you gotta at least turn this way. Yeah. Everybody. What about me?
Nothing wrong with y'all standing behind him, just make sure so I can use everything he says. Don't make any face, keep a solid face.
That's perfect.